Good morning, 10 a.m. on a Friday morning in a beautiful Perth. It's a glorious spring day. We've been having very, very hot weather, but today is just gorgeous. Welcome to my Friday morning post. I'm Karen Frankel. I'm here to help you to get drawing and work on your artwork and understand a few things about it. And today we're talking about, or I'm talking about, how do you know when your artwork is finished? So welcome. Just like to say, if you guys watched last Friday's episode, lots of people have been asking me if I'm left-handed. No, I'm not. I have an Android phone, and that mirrors the live videos if you're using the front camera. And so it was a bit strange watching it back, and that means if I ever put anything up there, you can't read things because it's backward. And unfortunately on Android phones we can't turn that mirroring off like you can on Apple. So that's a little bit of useless information, just in case you're wondering. So my studio that you can see in the background is back to front. Okay, let's get on with today's topic. I'd really love to know from you if you sometimes get to the end of a piece and you really don't know, have I finished or not, and we end up fiddling with it and playing with it, and it's really quite a difficult thing to adjust. Something's going on with my phone. I'm not sure why I can't see things properly, but anyway, I hope you can see me. First of all, I guess at the outset of your useful to know what your intention is for that piece. So are you just doing a quick study? Are you just mucking around, taking reference, making reference sketches, that sort of thing? Is it for you to use later? Are you out and about drawing the trees, getting reference points like that? Are you doing a study of something individual? Are you practicing drawing, I don't know, something like machinery, or and you're actually practicing getting 3 dimensions, that sort of thing? So doing a study, which means you're not intending doing a full composition. Or are you in fact intending finishing a piece, whether it's a drawing or a painting, and you want that piece to be exhibitable, is that a word, at the end? So there's lots of things that we need to think about right at the outset, which will determine whether our piece is finished or not. So I guess for today's little chat, I am actually thinking about when we want a finished piece, we want a piece that we'd like to put in a frame, or we'd like to consider is a full composition, and we end up at the end, or the end game, if you will, if you play chess, we end up not really knowing and fiddling, and maybe I'll put a bit of stuff there. And I know that in the classroom, certainly when I'm teaching, a lot of times my students will carry on drawing until I've come around and told them, yes, that's enough, because they're sitting there with nothing to do. And that's the worst reason to be carrying on with something. The same applies to, have I got all this luscious colour left on my palette? Well, then I can't be finished. I'm just going to use all my paint up. And deciding on whether your piece is finished or not is outside of those constraints. Has the teacher told me to finish? Has my time allocation that I've given myself finished? That has no bearing on whether the actual piece is finished or not. For some reason, I cannot see if anyone is on with me, so I hope you are. I can't see any likes, and that's about the same as it has always been, so I'm trusting that you're there and or watching on the replay. So try and ask, I do have one person watching. Okay, I can see that now. Hello. Okay, now to get on to 5 tips of how you can help yourself to decide whether your work is finished. The first tip is to step away from your work, and it's something that you don't only do at the beginning, sorry, not at the beginning, but you don't only do at the end, but you also do that during the process. It helps you to see the whole picture. When you are busy with that piece on the desk or on an easel, you're so close to it that sometimes you're focused on a particular area, and even though hopefully you're trying to be aware of the whole composition, it's not always that easy. So stepping back from it is a fantastic thing to do during the process, but especially important to do when you think you may have finished. And what I try and do is I put my piece up on an easel if I'm working on a desk, or if I'm drawing, I usually work on a board in front of me, which is leaning up against a desk, so very hard to move myself away from that. I put that drawing on an easel and I turn my back on it and I go to the other side of the room, or I go off to the kitchen and I make myself a cup of coffee and I remove myself physically, and then I come back into the room and see my piece with fresh eyes. And those fresh eyes are really important. We get we can't see the wood for the trees, as the saying goes, and we're too wrapped up in it. So coming back with fresh eyes is brilliant. And if you're really struggling, you can actually turn it away from you, put it up against the wall, come back later in the day or even later in the week, turn it back around and see it with fresh eyes. So stepping back physically, so moving yourself away to the other side of the room so that you can see the whole of the painting or the picture, lets you know whether your composition is working or not. And you'll find that if your eye is drawn to one particular part of it all the time, it won't be complete. You will need to do something about that, have a stepping stone somewhere else in your painting or your drawing to help your eye travel around. So you don't just want to be dragged down to the corner of or one particular spot in your composition. So that's stepping away from your work both in time. So if you're really struggling, stepping away in time, a week later you come back to your work and it will look different physically, so that you can see the whole picture. Another part about stepping away in time is sometimes just putting it on the mantelpiece and having it at the corner of your eye while you're watching TV, while you're making dinner, or putting it on a bookshelf somewhere. That sort of thing gets you used to it, and little things bubble to the surface of, okay, I know what's missing. Or you get to the end of the week and you say, actually, there's nothing missing. I'm really happy with it. It looks fine. So that's my first tip. Second tip, and this is a bit strange if you've never encountered it before, turn your work upside down. And you can even turn it sideways. So every edge, turn it around, but particularly upside down works well. And have a look at the overall composition of the work. So when you turn it upside down, you forget about the subject matter and you just look at the composition. And if your eye is traveling around the picture and looking at interesting places, usually your extreme light area against an extreme dark area, but not always, but that's a good general rule for a focal area. Have a look at whether the picture looks balanced. What does balanced look like? Well, if you put a little V up at the bottom, There you go. I've put it visually up against the bottom of that painting. And if the painting seesaws backwards and forwards like that, then you know that it's not balanced. And it's not something that is quantifiable to talk about. But you will know when you put your finger up there and you draw a little triangle underneath, whether that painting is leaning one way or the other. And if it is, that is not a balanced work. You may deliberately want that, in which case you want to unsettle your viewer, then that's fine. Then that's a decision you've made, and then that's a finished piece. So that little balancing trick works really well. And it works well if your piece is upside down as well. It just gives you those fresh eyes again and shows you a different aspect of your work. Very nice to do. Third little tip, and that is take a photograph of your work. We all are carrying around cameras in our iPhones, or in my case on my Samsung Android. Take a photograph of your work. Try to make it dead on. So if your work is flat on the floor, try to get a proper bird's eye view of it. If it's on an easel, try to make the sides of your camera, use the edge of your picture on your, to line up the edges of your painting so that it's as square as possible, and take a photo and look at that photograph. So again, what that does is it does a little bit of the removing you from the picture, like the first tip, and it brings your painting or your drawing to a small, easily viewed work. And once again, you can see more easily if it's working as a finished composition. You're not so worried about the detail. Often when we don't think a work is finished, it's because we haven't put in enough, we think we haven't put in enough detail lines and what I call stuff. And stuff is when you go, oh, I think I need something there, I'm not quite sure, I'm just going to go chuck something in, and it's just stuff because you think something needs to be there, you're not quite sure, and you just put it in without really knowing. So my warning to you is don't put that stuff in unless you actively have a reason for it and know what it's going to do for your composition. So taking a photograph allows you to not see all the detail and see if the whole thing works well for you. Then you know that it is complete. The other way of having a similar look, making it smaller, is to actually look at your work in a mirror. And so you turn around, look at it in a mirror, and the mirror has the effect of reducing the size of your work. It is the same principle as looking at it as a photograph. Obviously, you get a reverse image, but you still get to see if the whole composition is working. And that is more telling about whether the work is finished than is there enough detail in it. Step back from your work. The fourth tip, try not to decide on whether your work is finished based on whether it looks like the subject or whether you have everything in that still life, whether you've put everything in. We get trapped into that. All of us do. I've got quite a lot of experience, and I still find myself trapped in this, have I put everything in that's in my photograph that I'm using, or the still life, or the en plein air that I'm looking out. I'm looking out at my beautiful garden at the moment. Have I put everything in? And that is not a good foundation for discovering or deciding on whether your work is finished or not. Even with a portrait, a lot of people say, is it finished when it is a likeness? And yes, I know that we all want our portraits to have a likeness to the person that we're drawing, but it's not the be-all and end-all. Does the portrait look three-dimensional? Does it show the character of the person? Is it complete in what it is depicting. So rather than exactly what you're looking at, take what you're looking at as your starting point, but the end point is your work. So it's whether your composition looks good. That's the criteria that we need to decide whether our work is complete or not, or finished. Don't make it about, have I put everything in? That is also partly about design and decision making at the beginning of your process, thumbnail design, that sort of thing, the type of thing I was talking about in last week's video, paying attention, having awareness of what's going on in the whole picture. That will lead you to a better conclusion, and you will know more easily when the work is finished. So, so that's 4 things. Step away from your work, both physically and in time. Step away in time. Fantastic. I know that I have a 5th, fantastic, my favorite way of knowing whether things are finished. So hang on a minute, just to summarize. Turn your picture every which way, see if it's balanced, put that little V fulcrum underneath your painting, see if it falls one way or another, or whether you have to do something about that. Take a photograph or look in a mirror behind you, which reduces the size of your work so that you can see the main composition without worrying about detail. And don't base your decision on whether you have everything in it that you can see from your starting point and what you're using as your subject. The last tip, and if you don't do any of the others, do this one. Stop fiddling. How do you know if it's fiddling, or how do you know if it is correcting? How do you know if you're improving? And if you look at your work and you think that there is something that it needs to improve it, based on balance, based on design, based on darks and lights, all of that sort of thing, if whatever you are going to do doesn't have an effect on the whole composition, then it's fiddling. So if you're just putting stuff like I was mentioning before, and you just, oh yes, no, I need a few more wrinkles in there, I need a few more lines in that petal, I need a few more grasses, I don't think I've got enough grasses, or I don't think I've got enough flowers in the vase, that sort of thing. Unless it changes the design of the whole composition, which is sometimes why we need to step back so we can look at the whole composition. If it doesn't make a difference, then it's fiddling and there's no point to it. So I feel very strongly about this. I was given this piece of information by a wonderful artist that I have done a few workshops with by the name of Judith White, and it has stuck with me as a teacher and as an artist. If it's not changing and affecting the whole composition, making it more interesting, adding a dark stepping stone, anything large, or the change doesn't have to be large, believe you me. It can be a line under the shadow of a lip, it can be that sort, it can be a small change, but it needs to affect the whole composition. And you'll be surprised, I often have students say to me, oh my goodness, I didn't realize that just that clarification line could make so much difference to the whole piece. So it doesn't have to be a large change physically in what you're doing, but it does have to affect largely, I guess is what I'm trying to say, the whole composition. And that's a real test for, have I finished? Is this work doing what I want it to do? Eyes, am I attracted to the focal point? Does it work as a design upside down? If you're not sure at that stage, then leave it for a day or for a week and come back to it. Put it on your mantel sheet mantelpiece. Do people still have mantelpieces? Or on your bookshelf, or next to the TV, or lean it up against something in the kitchen, somewhere where it's not going to get splashed, and sit with it for a bit. You don't have to be in a rush to complete things. Sometimes in a rush to complete things, but not if you're looking for a lovely completed artwork. So I hope this has been a nice session for you. I've thoroughly enjoyed sharing my knowledge. Thanks to the couple of people that came online. I did see the numbers come up. If you're watching in replay, I'd really like to know if you could put hashtag in the comments. Ask me any questions. I would love to know, does this happen to you? Do you find any of these things helpful? Have you found them for yourself? What do you do? Is there something else that you do that helps you know whether your work is finished or not? I'd really love to hear. And in fact, see your work. If you'd like to join our exclusive Get Drawing Facebook group, I'd love for you to join that. And of course, join my email list. I gave a sneak peek to one of the videos that I'm putting in my book. So that's, go to my website, karenfrankel.com, and click on Get Drawing, and you'll be able to join my email list. It's been lovely chatting. See you next week. I'm off to see the Leicester Prize, which used to be called the Black Swan Prize. That's the Portraiture Prize at the Art Gallery of WA. It's a lovely morning for it. Enjoy your week and get drawing. See you next week. Bye.